Hello everybody, welcome to Teacher Not Preacher. I am Jay Smith, and today I wanted to just do an introduction to the letter that Jesus instructed John to write to the congregation of Thyatira. We have wrapped up his letter to Pergamos or Pergamum, and now we're going to move on to this new congregation. So Thyatira, that's what it was called 2,000 years ago. Today we know it as Akhisar, which is in Turkey. So it's still there, just a different name. And it is 40 miles southeast of Pergamos or Pergamum. So it was in pretty close proximity to that congregation, as well as the remaining three congregations that we're going to discuss in further discussions. Now, how was it compared to Pergamos? We know that in Pergamos they had a lot of pagan influences, and they engaged in emperor worship, where they would actually worship their emperor, their live human emperor. Well, they didn't have that in Thyatira, but they did have shrines and temples still to pagan gods. So it was a bit better than Pergamos, but it still had its problems. It was primarily known as a commercial trading center. So the first Christian on history from Thyatira was a woman by the name of Lydia. And Lydia came into contact with Paul. Paul is the one that is responsible for really spreading Christianity after Jesus ascended back to heaven. Well, one day Paul was preaching in Macedonia, and he ran into this Lydia. The Bible calls her a seller of purple. Back then, in those days, purple cloth was considered a luxury item, sort of like a brand name type thing that we have today. But it was a big seller, and it was like I say, a luxury item. But that just calls her a seller of purple. Let's take a look at that account in Acts chapter 16. It's Acts chapter 16. And let's go to verses 14 and 15. It says, "And a certain woman named Lydia, a seller of purple, of the city of Thyatira, which worshipped God, heard us, whose heart the Lord opened, that she attended unto the things which were spoken of Paul. And when she was baptized in her household, she besought us, saying, If ye have judged me to be faithful to the Lord, come into my house and abide there. And she constrained us." So there we see the account of the first Christian on record for Thyatira. And from her, it branched out, and we got our first congregation in Thyatira, which is what this next letter goes to. So let's take a look at that letter. Revelation chapter 2. And verse 18. This is the message to Thyatira. And this is Jesus speaking. "And unto the angel of the church in Thyatira write, These things saith the Son of God, who hath his eyes like unto a flame of fire, and his feet are like fine brass. or in other translations it may say copper. Okay, well, this is the only time in the book of Revelation that Jesus refers to himself as the title Son of God. There are other times in Revelation where he refers to God as his Father, but this is the one time where he calls himself the Son of God. Let's take a look at these other ones where he calls God his Father. Revelation 2, we'll stay there, but let's go to verse 27. It says, "And he shall rule them with a rod of iron, as the vessels of a potter shall they be broken into shivers, even as I received of my Father." Okay, and then if we go to chapter 3, look at verse 5, still Jesus speaking, he says, "He that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in white raiment, and I will not blot out his name out of the book of life, but I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels." And if we look at verse 21, still Jesus speaking, "To him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I also overcame and am set down with my Father in his throne." Okay, so when he refers to himself as the Son of God, what he's wanting to do here is to convey to the congregation just how close and how intimate his relationship is with God. When you say it like that, you're the offspring of God, you're the Son of God, it shows a certain type of intimacy that no one else could really have. So it's important to note that in this verse about that title, Son of God. Now, what else does it say? It says, talking about Jesus, "has his eyes like unto a flame of fire." Well, we've seen this before, but what this is talking about is it's a warning to the congregation that Jesus' judgment will blaze against anything that he sees to be defiling in the congregation. Okay, so he's taking a look over them, and if they're doing something that is incorrect, anything that's defiling the congregation, it's symbolizing his fiery blaze of anger. All right, and now his feet, what do we see here? It says his feet are like fine brass or like fine copper. We've discussed this before also. This is the second time that we've seen this in Revelation. And remember that it emphasizes Jesus' own shining example of faithfulness while he was walking the earth. So that's why his feet are shining like bright brass or copper. Let's take a look at 1 Peter. And we'll go to chapter 2 and verse 21. It says, this is Paul speaking. It says, "For even hereunto were ye called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example that ye should follow his steps." Okay. So there we're seeing that when Christ walked and suffered for us, when he walked this earth, he left an example that we should follow. Okay? All right. Let's go on to the second verse that I wanted to discuss. Going back to Revelation. And we're back still on chapter 2. And we're going to do verse 19. I know thy works in charity and service and faith and thy patience and thy works, and the last to be more than the first. Okay. So here when he's talking to them, he doesn't mention how they've lost their first love for God like he did to the congregation of Ephesus. The Ephesians were reprimanded for that, how they had lost their first love, but he doesn't mention that here. It says, I know thy works and charity and service and faith and thy patience and thy works. Other translations, it's going to say ministry. And that's kind of what I want to focus on. The ministry. When he's talking about service and thy works, he's talking about the ministry and how important that is. How important is the ministry? It's extremely important. Jesus told us to be fishers of men, which means, having our congregation is really good. It's nice to have our brothers and sisters. But we also have another commandment from Jesus, which is to go out and grab other people and reel them in to Christianity to save their life. That's the purpose of it. And to give them hope that this life is not all there is. All right, so let's take a look at Matthew chapter 24. And let's look at verse 14. It says, And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. Okay, so that's how important the ministry is. Jesus is talking about the end of this system of things, the end of the corruption, corrupt governments, and the installation of his own kingdom here on earth. But he's saying before that happens, the gospel of the kingdom shall have to be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations first. Okay? So, has that work been completed? I don't know. There's no way of me being able to tell you that, but you could say in a general sense it has, but at the same time, I'm sure there are tribes in Africa that have never been exposed to Christianity, so I'm not sure. Let's also take a look at Mark and chapter 13. And then verse 10. This is Jesus speaking. And the gospel must first be published among all nations. Okay. So these are commandments. Now, how can you engage in the ministry? Do you have to go around knocking on people's doors? No, you don't have to do that. Do you have to make a video like me? No, you don't have to do that. You can. You could share this video. You can simply engage in the ministry by talking to your friends and family. That's a great start. As long as you are trying to save other people's lives by giving them this message that this wicked world is going to end and Jesus is coming back to restore it to a paradise earth, and all the wicked will be gone and humans will be restored to perfection. That's what we're commanded to do. So you can do it to friends, family, strike up a conversation with a stranger. If that happens, you can toss it in there somehow. Okay, so I wanted to talk about those things. Also, I'm speaking about the end of this system of things. And as we're looking on the news, and we don't even have to look at the news anymore. We can just go to a store and look around us and see with the masks and the distancing and everything, the future looks kind of bleak right now. It looks pretty dark. I don't see any news channels giving me any light of hope. But the Bible, according to the Bible, it says that an end will come, an end to all sickness, an end to the corruption that's going on in our governments. And I just wanted to hammer that home. This is a little off the topic of Revelation. Not quite. It's off of our track of going verse by verse through Revelation. But it still, obviously, deals with Revelation. But let's look at Zephaniah. If we can take a look at Zephaniah chapter 1 and go to verse 14. It says, "The great day of the Lord is near. It is near and hasteth greatly. Even the voice of the day of the Lord, the mighty man shall cry there bitterly." Okay. So, the great day is near. That day is the day of judgment. It's the day of destruction of the wicked. It's the day of bringing in God's kingdom. Let's take a look also at Joel. Joel chapter 2. It's a few pages over. Okay, Joel chapter 2 and the first verse. "Blow ye the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord cometh, for it is nigh at hand." Again, it's saying that the Lord's day is near. Okay? I'm just trying to show you from the Bible that according to the Bible, the end is near. It may happen in our lifetime, it may not. Okay? God's timetable is a little bit different than ours. But the point here I'm trying to make is that for our offspring and their offspring and their offspring, they're not going to have to always deal with the world being so wicked and corrupt. It eventually comes to an end, and it very well could come in our lifetime. We just don't know the day or the hour. Now if we look at Habakkuk, which is right before Zephaniah, this is kind of a famous verse here, chapter 2 of Habakkuk, verse 3. It says, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry." It will not tarry, that means it will not be late. Again, saying that the end, it's going to happen, it's going to be on time, and it is near. All right? Further, let's look into Revelation, but let's go a few chapters ahead of where we're studying. Let's go into Revelation chapter 7 and look at verse 9. Revelation 7:9. "After this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands." Okay, so this is the great multitude of people which no man can even number. So it's a great multitude of people that are going to make it through the tribulation that does lie ahead of us, and make it through to the end after Jesus comes back and installs his kingdom. There's going to be a lot of people. In other words, we're not all going to be killed off during the tribulation that lies ahead. The Bible speaks of a tribulation that comes before Jesus' day, when he comes back to destroy the wicked. We're going to have to first endure what the Bible calls a great tribulation. But even though it's a great tribulation, it's saying that there's a great multitude that make it through it. Okay, so again, that could happen in our lifetime. And lastly, if we stay in Revelation and go to chapter 22, and we look at verse 12, it says, "And behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me, to give every man according as his work shall be." Okay. So again, if according to his work. So if you're a wicked at heart, just pure, unadulterated, wicked, you're really not going to get a reward. But if you're faithful to the very end, you will. You will make it into paradise. So I just wanted to kind of talk about that here at the end of this, because I know that, like I say, the future looks bleak, but we got to keep in mind that Jesus is going to put an end to it. And yeah, things are probably going to keep getting worse for a while, but it ends. It's not going to be like this forever. Okay? So I want you to hang in there. This is all according to the Bible. Okay? Like I say, I'm just a teacher, not a preacher. So according to the Bible, that's what it says. So if you believe that the Bible is the Word of God, then have faith on that. Okay? So I will end there. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe, like, and share. Okay? God bless. Have a great day.